So Brandt, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we walk into the future, can you please tell us a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up?
Nick, firstly, I would like to thank you for the honor and the privilege to have this conversation with you. I really look forward to sharing my views with you, and I'm sure I will also learn a lot from my interaction with you.
Thank you.
So I grew up in the Free State province, in a small one-horse town called Bultfontein. I'm sure you don't know where Bultfontein is.
I don't.
I matriculated at Kroonstad High School, also in the Free State.
Yeah.
So I grew up in the, as we say in Afrikaans, in the platteland, in a rural area of South Africa, and my late father was a teacher and eventually a school principal and eventually an inspector of schools.
Right. And Brandt, can you tell us what was your dream career when you grew up?
Nick, when I grew up, my dream career was to become a designer of cars, because I became a motor enthusiast, a car enthusiast at a very early age, thanks to the influence of my eldest brother. So I wanted to work in the motor industry and I wanted to design cars.
And can you tell us who were your influencers in the history of car making?
I was very interested at that time in French cars, and Renault in particular. So my mother had a Renault Dauphine, and for that reason I became a Renault fan, and my father had a Chevrolet. So Chevrolet and Renault were my favorite brands.
And yet you went on to lead the leading Japanese car brand for so many years. Can you tell us when did you switch from your focus from French cars to Japanese cars, maybe?
What happened, Nick, is that I did my master's degree thesis on the South African motor industry. Yeah. And I sent extracts from my thesis to Ford, to Volkswagen, and to Toyota. Yeah. And fortunately, somebody at Toyota read the chapter I sent, and then 3 weeks later, I joined Toyota South Africa, and I spent 22 wonderful years there. I don't know whether you will remember, you arrived here in 1994, but Toyota had a slogan at the time, and the slogan was, "Everything keeps going right."
I remember there was even a jingle, I believe.
Yes, so I can tell you a story about that particular jingle, but nevertheless, so I then converted from being a Renault man to a Toyota man, and I am so grateful for the opportunity I had of spending all those years at Toyota. It was a wonderful, wonderful learning experience.
So if I may, Brandt, expand a little bit on the brand Toyota. You built it into the leading brand in the country, and obviously Toyota became the #1 car brand in the world. I believe it was more profitable than any other car brand, and it trumped the sales of all their competitors. And this brand promise, everything keeps going right. I mean, that literally was burnt into the collective mind, right? I even saw it on a car the other day, driving behind a car with that slogan. Can you tell us a little bit about how did you come up, how did your team come up with a slogan, and what kind of difference did it make?
Nick, we had a brainstorming session many years ago. It was in 1973, 1974, I think, before you were born.
Yeah.
So, and we, as a team, we said, what would differentiate us? Yeah. What would set us apart? And that feature or characteristic should be relevant and important through the eyes of our customers. And we thought long and hard, was Toyota, in terms of the features and the benefits that it offered its customers, was it the most fuel efficient? Was it the most stylish? Was it offering the best performance? To cut a long story short, we identified our competitive advantage as reliability. And then we developed the whole concept of everything keeps going right. And we established a commitment to a positive ownership experience. And we were consistent in living that brand promise, not only Toyota SA, but also its dealer network. And all our communication was aimed at the amplification of that brand promise, everything keeps going right. So you are the expert in the area of branding and marketing. The only thing I can say is we were totally consistent, and we mobilized every conceivable tool or mechanism to entrench the brand promise. We also developed a campaign. It was called the Toyota Touch. Uh-huh. And it was more a way of life. So all the Toyota people could identify with the Toyota Touch, and I think that created a very strong platform for Toyota's leading position in this country.
Now, if I remember correctly, Toyota was always also a champion of innovation, right? And ideas management. And now that you bring up the Toyota Touch, I assume that you and your team went all the way to make sure that every touch point of your brand was optimized.
Absolutely. You have identified the critical success factor, because you can't make a brand promise and raise expectations and then let people down. And it happened a few times, and then people used the slogan against us, saying everything doesn't keep right. And so the commitment to customer fulfillment became part of the DNA of Toyota and Toyota's dealers.
And brand, talking about brand leadership and making a brand promise, what would be your message to future leaders who are now setting out to build their own brand and maybe build a brand that they can take to the world from South Africa? What is it they should consider most when building a brand?
I would recommend that they should do proper market research, do quality thinking, make absolutely sure that their product is relevant, competitive, distinctive, and that obviously that that the benefits that they can offer are meaningful and sustainable. And then based on the brand promise, they should be consistent when it comes to marketing communication. There's no need, Nick, to tell you about all the various elements of the marketing mix. It's like conducting a symphony orchestra. So the company should then deploy the services of a marketing expert who can mobilize all the elements of the marketing mix. And then in the final analysis, effective marketing is all about results,
Right.
all about delivering a good return on investment to the shareholder. Otherwise, the marketing effort won't be sustainable.
Right. Now, Brand, your leadership inspired so many people throughout the years, but if I may ask, who inspired you? And maybe who inspired you especially in your early days?
Nick, my mother did. She never went to university. She never had a full-time job. My father, as I said earlier, was a teacher, and my mother sat in his class. He was 10 years older than what she was. And at the age of 19, after she matriculated, they got married. My mother raised 4 sons without ever raising her voice. She had no authority, but she earned our love and our respect and our trust and our admiration. And although she had no authority, she had a disproportionate amount of influence. And that is what I learned from her, that people are more receptive to love than to fear.
Right.
So in our home, my mother was the heart and my father was the head, but my mother had infinitely more influence than what he had. And therefore, even in the tough world of business, I said to myself, my mother's approach, my mother's philosophy worked.
Yeah.
If I want real commitment, then I must care about my people and be willing to serve them.
Now, Brand, you're one of the most prominent businessmen the country has ever produced. Looking back over your career, and I mean, your accomplishments, your awards, your honors are longer than I can count, but have there been some turning points where you made the decision to go a certain way, where things could have gone a different way? And maybe can you share 1 or 2 of those major turning points in your career?
Nick, an important turning point happened in 1978. I had been with Toyota South Africa then for 5 years.
Yeah.
And one day, the managing director of Toyota South Africa at the time, a gentleman with the name of Colin Adcock, he called me to his office and he said to me, and I was at that time the market research manager, but he said to me, Brant, you have the potential, I believe, to take over from me one day. And that was a critical moment because I never, ever before that discussion saw myself in a senior leadership position. And Colin Adcock then went out of his way to coach me, to guide me. So that was an absolute turning point.
Thank you, Brand, for sharing. And before we walk into the future of leadership, can you tell us what is driving you today?
Nick, when I retired, I split my life post-retirement, or one can talk about my third career. I split my life into learning, teaching, and serving.
Yeah.
So the learning part comprises directorships of companies outside of the motor industry, because I want to learn new things. The teaching, leadership, mentoring, and coaching that I do, and the serving, my involvement in a number of programs aimed at uplifting the quality of education. So I'm continuing with that. Secondly, what drives me is my commitment to honor every day the principles and the values I believe in and stand for. And in that process, I want to set the best example possible for my 7 grandchildren, whom I love very much. And then lastly, what drives me is the desire to have quality and fulfilling relationships with the people I love. Because due to my workaholic behavior during my executive career, I had very little time to invest in relationships, and I am determined to change that.
Thank you, Brand. And I think there are many lessons for many future leaders, especially when they shifting gears, as you call it in your book, I believe. So you never retired, Brand. I guess you just keep shifting gears. Is that right?
Nick, I think the whole concept of retirement is obsolete. And I'm looking for intellectual stimulation. And apart from anything else, in a country like South Africa, where the needs are almost overwhelming, it's almost criminal for a person who has experience and expertise to just sit at home and to become inwardly focused. Right. So I respect that people can make their own choices, but I just believe that that one can continue making a difference. One needn't wait 1 second, because the opportunities to make a difference in this country are everywhere.
I agree. Thank you, Brand. Now, Brand, looking into the future, what would you say? What does the future of leadership mean to you?
Nick, the future, in my opinion, is daunting, but also exciting. And let me firstly say that despite the dramatic changes in the business environment, there are timeless principles and values that leaders should live by that will still represent the key to sustainable leadership success. Right. I'm talking about timeless principles like compassion, consistency, fairness, justice, integrity, values like openness and sincerity, the acceptance of responsibility, excellence in everything one does. So leaders of the future still need to live those principles and values every day. But obviously, the environment has changed completely. You've heard futurists talking about the so-called new normal, referring to the fourth industrial revolution, the technology tsunami. They now talk about the never normal. So leaders of the future will have to adjust to that new world. They'll have to realize that the world is becoming so unpredictable, the business environment so complex and so competitive that they cannot do everything on their own. So my prediction is that the days of the hero leader are coming to an end. The days of the autocratic leader definitely is coming to an end, because leaders will more than ever before in the future need every drop of intelligence, every drop of energy, every little bit of commitment from all their people. Syndicated leadership is going to represent the answer. And the leaders of tomorrow will have to recognize the reality that they cannot demand influence, they can only earn it. They will have to follow an inclusive approach, engage people, earn people's commitment. They'll have to accept that they're going to lead diverse teams, and they're going to lead them remotely. And that in itself will be a challenge, how to keep people motivated, how to get them to embrace the culture of the organization. So a new world, a disorderly world, a very competitive world, an unpredictable world, and leaders have to adapt to those circumstances. And more than ever before, as John Maxwell put it, everything will rise and fall by leadership. Leadership will matter more than ever before.
And Brandt, if I hear you correctly, it is becoming harder and harder to be a leader, especially if you look at syndicated leadership. And probably leadership, becoming a leader also means personal transformation, right?
Yes, absolutely, Nick. It's a complicated, very challenging responsibility. But it is still about passion and people and purpose. And leadership is still about and will remain. It's all about giving direction, having the courage to go first. So the fundamentals of leadership will just become more pronounced. But I agree with you, leadership of self will be critical because of all the pressure, because of all the complexity. So leaders would need to be adaptable, because change is the price of survival. They have to remain relevant. Leaders will need to be agile and creative. They'll have to boast a high level of moral intelligence, because dishonesty, unethical behavior is everywhere. because of all the pressure, they'll need to be emotionally intelligent. They'll have to apply more self-discipline than ever before. And they will have to learn to persevere, because the path of leadership, as it's been in the past, but even more so in the future, it will be a path of ups and downs, sometimes perhaps dark valleys, and other times bright sunshiny days. So leaders of tomorrow, in terms of their self-leadership skills, they would need to be very resilient, and they would need to develop the capacity or the ability to strike a good balance between life at work and life at home, because executive burnout is already a major problem, and because of the increased complexities, the more intense competition in the future, they will have to manage themselves very, very carefully in order to avoid something like executive burnout.
Right. Now, Brant, looking back over your own leadership journey and maybe those pivotal moments, the turning points, what is your advice? What can we do more to empower, to encourage, to enable future leaders? What are the things that really can make a difference to the lives and the career of those future leaders that are out there?
Yeah, Nick, my view is that that a first prerequisite and something that we should encourage leaders of the future is to embark upon a journey of lifelong learning. I read a statement recently by a futurist called Eric Hofner, and he said, in times of change, learners inherit the earth.
Right.
So leaders need to embark upon a lifelong journey of learning. Leaders definitely need to be curious. Leaders of tomorrow have to become more familiar with technology, how to mobilize the internet and social media, artificial intelligence, robotics, to make their businesses better. But let me get back to the fundamentals of effective leadership. Ego should be suppressed. Leaders should rather build their characters. In my opinion, leaders should develop the capacity to care and the willingness to serve. And leaders need to prize truth and respect and results and service above power, authority, self-importance, and self-enrichment. And leaders who want to achieve success should stand for the truth, for the affirmation of the good. And leaders should engage the minds of their people, but they should also touch their hearts. I said to my people often, to my fellow leaders at Toyota and McCarthy, before we can ask for a hand, we should touch a heart. And one only touches a heart by caring and serving. But I acknowledge that in the final analysis, the effectiveness of leadership will depend on your ability to turn vision into reality. Your effectiveness will determine whether you achieve results. And therefore, I'm not advocating just a soft approach. I'm saying one can lead in such a way that you lead with a firm hand, but with a gentle touch. You can lead effectively by remaining hard-headed when it comes to results, but by having a gentle heart when it comes to people. So the ability to inspire, the ability to motivate, the ability to give information meaning. So communication will be an all-important tool. But let me conclude by saying that to get to the point where once people are fully engaged, because I mean, if you want your people to deliver sparkling results, then they need to be fully engaged. To get to that point, one has to be, in my book, a dedicated, committed servant leader.
And talking about your book, you're obviously also an author of the best-selling book, In the Driving Seat. And Brandt, if there's one message you would like to pick up from your book for now, what would that be?
Nick, in my book, I liken leadership to electricity. I use the electricity analogy. I mean, like this morning, we have load shedding here.
Right.
So I'm saying leadership is much like electricity. Unfortunately, should one look at employee engagement scores, it's clear that, and very unfortunate, that many people, many team members, many employees are, figuratively speaking, spending their days in darkness, without direction, without hope, completely disengaged because of poor leadership. So, my message, my key message is, be deliberate in your efforts to switch on the lights every morning. Be the light switch.
Right.
Look your people in the eye. Respect them. Trust them. Empower them. Involve them. Train them. Coach them. But most of all, love them.
Right. So I guess in the language of the motor trade, you need to fill up your leadership tank every single morning.
Absolutely. And to be an effective leader will continue to require not only vision, not only perspective, not only knowledge, but also a lot of courage and commitment.
Now, Brandt, these are challenging times, probably more challenging than they have been for a long time. And what is your advice for future leaders? What are some of the biggest challenges they should expect to encounter and hopefully overcome in their career?
Nick, I think the most formidable challenge is going to, for them to make themselves future-proof and to also to make themselves future-proof and future-fit and to make their businesses future-proof. So big challenges for the leaders of tomorrow will be in a volatile, unpredictable, ever-changing world. They need to come up with appropriate strategies that will ensure that their businesses flourish. And that is going to be a formidable challenge. So, with the environment changing so quickly, they will have to transform in order to fit into the new environment. Yeah. And simultaneously, they'll have to perform because competition is going to be more intense than ever before. And that is a daunting task, to perform and transform simultaneously. Futurists used to talk about the new normal. Now they talk about the never normal.
Right.
So leaders have to acknowledge that the current and the future situation, the storm will continue to rage. What they have to develop is the ability to dance in the rain. Continuous change. They need to have the ability to deal with that. And I would describe that as a critical challenge, and to keep their people engaged, to keep their people committed. They will have to, as I said previously, engage or be exemplary at 3 levels. The level of the head, because they will need more wisdom, more perspective, more insight. The level of the heart, self-awareness, a caring disposition. The level of the hands, because they have to set the best example, because leaders can only influence effectively through the power of their example. And lastly, they have to master the skill of execution. They need to get the job done. So leadership today and tomorrow is not defined by attributes or skills. Leadership is defined by your results. Planning means little, but successful implementation, due to effective leadership, means everything. So I don't want to sort of expand any more on the philosophy of leadership. Yeah. I'm just saying that every leader should have a leadership approach. Leaders can't afford to lead on autopilot. So they need to customize their own approach, an approach that will be authentic. They can't lead by emulating somebody else, but they have to recognize, in my view, that they need to get their people to the point where all their people are so engaged that they will volunteer their intelligence, their energy, their contribution, their commitment. That will only happen should all the team members buy into the vision. The vision should be a unifying, inspirational vision. It will only happen should all the team members behave in line with the values of the organization. It will only happen provided there's alignment between personal objectives and organizational objectives. It will only happen should there be a performance culture. So that, in my opinion, is the way to lead effectively, the way to turbocharge organizational effectiveness. So there is a formula. Just to conclude, if you put in front of your people a vision that will unify and inspire them, if you get your people to embrace the values that you believe in, because the values will act as the glue that will keep the people together. If you can get to the point where people's personal objectives are aligned with the organization's objectives, then you get synergy. And lastly, you have to earn the commitment of your people by caring about them and by serving them. And that, Nick, is it's a simple formula which I believe, if applied correctly, will lead to sustainable leadership effectiveness.
Thank you, Brant. Now, Brant, you are and you have been a mentor to many, many future leaders, and you were kind enough to share a success story, or let's say a letter from one of your mentees. And if I may quickly quote from that, a letter called A Moment with Brant, A Lifetime of Enlightenment. Now, here is a future leader who I assume hit a major roadblock in their career, right? Lost their business partner, was an end, and then saying that after 12 months of running my own business, winging was no longer a viable option, and I opted to get a mentor after being selected by Investec as one of the top 12 high growth potential businesses in South Africa. I contacted Brant through his website, and he responded immediately, offering to mentor me on a pro bono basis. He explained that he has a personal rule he always abides by naming to reward initiative. Brant, can you is that a personal mantra of yours?
Yes, Nick. I've always applied that sort of approach of philosophy. Should people take the trouble to try and get hold of me, should they display initiative, I always reward. Right. And in this case, this gentleman is a gentleman with the name of Musa Sambo, and he was only 26 years old. And he contacted, as you said, he contacted me through his website. And so since 2013, we've been meeting once a quarter. And I have learned more from Musa than what he has learned from me. Because he put me in touch with his initiative, his creativity, his determination, his enthusiasm. And he's been a source of inspiration. So perhaps I helped him a little bit because I have gray hair. I've had a 50-year long career. I've had good days and I've had bad days. I did a few good things and I made many mistakes. So it's been a privilege to have shared what I learned and what I experienced and what I stand for and what I believe in with Musa.
Thank you. And Brant, before we wrap up, are there any role models of leadership that you would recommend future leaders should maybe study and learn from?
Yes. So some years ago, I read a book. It's called Leading at the Edge. And it's about Sir Ernest Shackleton's first expedition in 1914. And it's an incredible story of endurance and perseverance and creativity. So role model number one is Ernest Shackleton.
Right.
I've read hundreds of books about leadership. Some of my favorite authors are John Maxwell, Warren Bennis. So I'm recommending, should people want to read good books about leadership. I was very fortunate. I knew Mr. Mandela reasonably well. I had the privilege of spending a reasonable amount of time with him. I don't know whether you will recall, but when he was inaugurated, he said, "I am here not to lead, I am here to serve."
Right.
So Mr. Mandela was one of my heroes. He still is, because of his integrity, the quality of his humanity, his humility. Definitely a strong role model. Then on the business side, and you may be surprised, I learned a lot from Jack Welch, the former chairman of GE, how to strike a good balance between the hard and the soft, how to be results driven, but how to also earn the trust and the confidence and the commitment of one's people. And then lastly, when it comes to servant leadership, the most exemplary role model is Jesus Christ, because he was a poor carpenter. He became one of the most influential leaders, if not the most influential leaders the world has ever known. He led in humility. He washed the feet of his disciples. He loved his people to the extreme. He died for them on the cross. So those are a few of the leaders who inspire me and whom I'm trying to learn about more and trying to emulate.
Thank you. And Brant, how can our viewers connect with you and where should they follow you?
Nick, I have a website, so it's very easy. Should they put in Brant Pretorius, they will get to the website very quickly. On YouTube, there are some videos of my a few of my presentations. I must confess, I'm not on Twitter, I'm not on Facebook. I'm trying to protect my privacy, and I need some breathing space.
Right.
Because so, but every single inquiry that I get through my website, I respond to.
And last but not least, Brandt, what is your message to the millions of kids who are now leaving school, who are looking to enter the world of work, to start their own career? What are maybe one or two success principles they should keep in mind?
The first one is make sure that you live according to the right principles and values. And my second message is concentrate on your results and not your ambition. And the third one is live your passion. Passion provides energy and enthusiasm. So make sure that you do something that you're passionate about.
Oh, Brandt, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership and being such a role model, shining the light in a world that is so challenging in these times, and encouraging so many future leaders.
Nick, I thank you for your kind words, which I appreciate but do not deserve. And I want to thank you for what you do and the positive influence you are. And I want to commend you on your commitment to our country, to South Africa and its people. We are indeed privileged.
Thank you.